Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
The Full Court Press is on the air.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Now, here's Sean Spicer.
Well, good Sunday to you. This is your host, Sean Spicer. Welcome to Full Court Press on WABC. What a week it's been. I get tired of saying that. I feel like I'm surprised somehow after all these years of Trump. Like, it's going to be a good week. It's going to be a hectic week. It's going to be fun. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be a ton of announcements. And this week did not disappoint. So much going on. Both in Iran, we had a bunch of fireworks on Capitol Hill. And the Democrats, what a horrible week. I'll get to that in a little bit. Brent Buchanan from Signal Polling. It's one of the best polling firms in the nation. One of the most accurate, one of the most relied upon. Has a brand new poll that just came out. And he is going to give us the latest on where the midterms stand, what the ballot test is, Republican versus Democrat, where they need to be messaging, what's going on in Iran and the SAVE Act. So that is coming up. And by the way, I had a great meeting on Friday with President Trump in the Oval Office. If you follow me on social media, especially on Instagram, I posted a bunch of the stuff from the Oval Office on my Instagram story. He was so cool. We sat there, chatted, caught up for like 25 minutes because I'm on the board of visitors to the U.S. Naval Academy. And President Trump then said, "Hey, Sean, come on down to the Oval Office and let's hang out for a little bit." And when the President of the United States does that, you don't say no. The other really cool thing is I'll tell you two inside stories because you know what? Because we're here and it's Sunday morning and we're spending some quality time. So he was kind enough. I've got a brand new book out called Trump 2.0. And so he had written the foreword to it. And it was funny. When I called him to tell him I was doing this book, I've written 4 other books. And first of all, I think my English teacher in grade school is probably laughing that I read a book, never mind wrote a book, and this is number 5, Trump 2.0. And so when I called him to tell him this, because I had this really interesting idea about contrasting Trump 1 to Trump 2. What's different? Why is it so consequential? Because no one's actually stopped and focused on that. And I wanted to do it because I believe that because he's not sequential. So we have had a ton of presidents back to back. He's only the second one and the first in modern history that haven't been back to back. So why is that important? Well, I tell people all the time, if you imagine playing a team in a season, whether it's soccer or baseball, who cares? And then you play them again later in the season. Well, you're going to know a lot more about that team. And I said to him, we were talking about this in the Oval Office on Friday. And I said, Mr. President, because he was looking at the cover of the book, because of course it's his face, just to be clear. And he was like, wow, this is great. And I said, it's you. That's why it's great. I mean, he's like, it's beautiful. And I'm like, well, it's your portrait. What did you think? Anyway, and I had him sign the cover. I printed it out just so he could see it and obviously get it signed. So, if my kids ever need money, they just sell that. Anyway, and I said to him, he was like, wow, I really we were talking about the title and it's for him, he was fascinated by it. And I said, sir, I don't this. And I feel awkward telling you this, but why this is so important is that if you hadn't had 4 years out of office, I don't think you'd be as successful. And he looked at me and he said, you're right. He said, I love the team I have now. And he kept saying, Sean, we had a great deal. And I said, yeah, sir, I'm not saying anything bad about the first term. But the ability for you to actually stop and have a moment to think, who are the people that were really good? Who do I want in a second term now that I've seen? Remember, Trump wasn't a politician. He's a business guy. I talk about this in the book. People were like, oh, you know who'd make a great undersecretary of energy? Oh, Bob. He'll be great. Okay, good. Well, Bob or Susie or whomever turned out that they weren't that great in many cases, or they were there for their own agenda, or they undermined his agenda. This time, that's not the case. And he's got the people around him that he's much more familiar with. And I cite this, that he's known Pete Hegseth for 10 or 15 years, Pam Bondi for 20, right? All the key people in the White House, too. Susie Wiles was with him on the first campaign. She's been over. Caroline was in the first White House. Margot Martin, Dan Scavino's known forever. I mean, but you stop and you reflect and you realize, wow, you're right. All these people, because he's much more comfortable around them, they're comfortable with each other. Anyway, it was just a fascinating conversation because, he wrote the foreword and I gave him a little synopsis of the book and all this stuff. And this is a few months back. But then I had a chance to really talk to him about it. And I got to be honest with you, one of the things when I left the White House, I was writing my first book, which I never really intended to do, truth be told. But in the process of doing that, you actually have stopped. When you're in the White House, it's a million miles an hour every day, right? So you don't have time. You have a hard enough time thinking about tomorrow, never mind reflecting on yesterday and last week. But when I went to write my first book, The Briefing, I had to go back and think about events. And there were certain things I'm like, wow, that was really, God, we didn't handle that well. Or wow, that was a really well done event. What did we do well about it? And I got to think about it. And one of the reasons that I wrote Trump 2.0 and that in my conversation with him is that he hasn't had time to think about like, wow, because he's in the midst of it every day. Boom, 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 boom. Anyway, I was so excited, and like I said, I posted it all. If you want to go to Amazon right now, you can go to Amazon and order Trump 2.0 by Sean Spicer. He is going to – I told him we're going to sit back down for an interview, talk about the book. We'll have that on the Sean Spicer Show on YouTube. So stick to me. I'll talk about it on this show every Sunday, obviously some of the latest updates. But the book comes out in a couple of weeks, and get your copy. If you're interested and you really want a book plate and me to sign it, I'd be glad to do that as well. Anyway, this week was big. We have a new confirmation hearing for the Department of Homeland Security, Senator Markwayne Mullen of Oklahoma. Now, here's the thing that blew my mind. In a hearing like this, I expect the Democrats to come after all of the Republicans like spider monkeys. And it's just with their silliness and their stupid statistics and comments, whatever. What made this hearing, and I'll be honest, I didn't fully appreciate it. But Rand Paul's the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. Apparently, him and Markwayne Mullen are not exactly Christmas card buddies. So this is a portion of Rand Paul's opening statement. This is normally like, Senator Mullen, it's great to see you. And, you've been such a great colleague. I pleased the president. I mean, platitude, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking the same thing, right? This is, Rand Paul may not vote with Trump 100%, but like, this is a colleague. This is his butt. They're in the same, there's only 53 Republicans in the Senate. They go to lunch every week. It's like a big club. This is the beginning of the hearing. This is how Rand Paul started it. Play.
Recently, Senator Mullen, if you have time to listen, you were confronted by constituents that were angry because you voted against my amendment to stop all funding for refugee welfare programs. Instead of explaining your vote to continue these welfare programs for refugees, you decided to transfer the blame. You told the media that I was a freaking snake and that you completely understood why I had been assaulted. I was shocked that you would justify and celebrate this violent assault that caused me so much pain and my family so much pain. I just wonder if someone who applauds violence against their political opponents is the right person to lead an agency that has struggled to accept limits to the proper use of force. Okay.
That's the beginning. At this point, I'm watching this thing, the TV on in the background, and I'm like, oh, okay. Now I want to hear Markwayne Mullen respond, because I was like, this is the kind of stuff, my friends, that you settle behind closed doors. Before the hearing starts, you go have it out in the back room. Hey, listen, we've had a tough time, blah, 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 but, you don't do that to me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we good? Bro, hug it out. I was like, I've never seen this. I came to Capitol Hill in 1994 for the Contract with America. I've never seen a chairman of someone of their own party go after a witness, a colleague of theirs like this ever. So how does Markwayne Mullen respond? Take a listen.
Senator Mullen, you are recognized for your opening statement.
I think before I can start my opening statement, I have to address the remarks that the chairman made, calling me a liar. Sir, I think everybody in this room knows that I'm very blunt and direct to the point, and if I have something to say, I'll say it directly to your face. If you recall, back in my House days, we actually did have this conversation because of the remarks that I made. You were in a room. I simply addressed that I said I could understand because of the behavior you were having, that I can understand why the neighbor did what he did. As far as my terms as a snake in the grass, sir, I work around this room to try to fix problems. I've worked with many people in this room. Seems like you fight Republicans more than you work with us. I did address those remarks. I did explain your gimmicks by the amendment you put forth. And as far as me saying that I invoke violence, I don't think anybody should be hit by surprise. I don't like that. But if I do have something to say, everybody in this room knows I'll come straight to you.
Straight to you. I mean, that's between Rand Paul's opening statement and Mark Wayne Mullen. But it did get a little better. Mark Wayne Mullen then took the temperature down and make it very clear that he wants to earn the respect of him. Take a listen.
And I don't like to fail at anything at all. So I can set it aside if you're willing to set it aside. Let me earn your respect. Let me earn the job. I won't fail you. I won't back down from a challenge. And I'll also admit when I'm wrong. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be perfect. I make mistakes just like anybody else. But mistakes, if you own them, you can learn from them and you can move ahead. And I'll make that commitment to you.
Okay.
Ranking Member Peters, to do.
Okay. There we go. So the temperature's down. We're buddies, right? Well, the hearing ends. Rand goes outside and addresses the media. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now, I mean, I feel like I'm watching some kind of movie here. Like, here's the up and the down. And okay, so Mark Wayne Mullen takes the temperature down. Hey, let's hug it out. Let's work for the common good. I'll represent, blah, 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 Washington speak. But this is Rand going out and talking to the press after the hearing.
Planning on voting for this nomination?
I think there are anger issues. I think there's a lack of contrition, both about the violence that was perpetrated on me, really the violent episode he was involved in the Senate committee where he's told the media, frankly, that he doesn't regret it. He's also told the media he said it again today, that there's historical precedent for violence, that caning and dueling happened all the time. And I pointed out, well, it was illegal 170, 200 years ago. They would actually flee and they would do it in areas they could find where the law didn't reach. Sometimes they would actually go to Canada. Sometimes they'd go from one state to the other. But the mass of civilized response, even in the 1850s or 1830s, was against it.
I just want to be clear. Rand Paul's talking about dueling. The legality of dueling like 100 years ago and them having a debate about whether it was okay and legal and fleeing to Canada. I mean, I'm like, this is two dudes who just need to sit across the table with a beer and be like, hey, we good? I mean, they're literally having an open debate about the legality of dueling. It's insane. The two other things that I want to flag that happened on the Hill, though, and then we'll take a short break, and then I'll come back and talk with Brent Buchanan of Signal Polling. And a little later in the show, I got to talk to you about how bad of a week the Dems had. But there was a big thing. Tulsi Gabbard's up on the Hill, and now everybody's paying attention because right before Tulsi goes up, obviously she's probably getting a ton of questions about Iran. But she's got this guy named Joe Kent who is very close to her. He was running the National Counterterrorism Center. Now everybody sees this big Joe Kent letter. He says, I have to resign. And the question is, oh my gosh, this is Joe Kent. He's saying that you were tricked into, Mr. President, I'm America first. You were tricked into this whole thing by the Israelis, and Iran is not an imminent threat. That was the key thing that the media ran with. Wild. But here's the problem. Joe Kent was on the Sean Ryan podcast 3 months ago, and here's what he had to say about Iran.
The intelligence community assesses that
they're still registering for the draft, aren't they? Like that's the logical conclusion to the direction that we're heading in right now, unless we make some serious changes.
I mean, I've already heard rumors that Fifth Group is going to be sending guys to Iraq because of the escalated situation with Iran now.
Yeah. I mean, most Americans aren't aware of it. Our troops in Iraq and Syria have been attacked 150 plus times by Iranian proxies. And when we say Iranian proxies, we got to be clear on what that is. That's the Iraqi government that we pay. Because after the Iraqi military, we spent $2 trillion on surrendered to ISIS. We had to go back in there in very short order and stand the military back up again. And guess who filled the breach? The Shia militias controlled by Iran did. And the Iraqi government's controlled by Iran.
I mean, I'm sorry. If you're going to say that that President Trump got tricked into Iran and it's not an imminent threat, you might want to listen to what you said a few months ago on a podcast that now everybody's sending around. That's Joe Kent. I'm sorry. Like, I feel like the rumors are coming out. He's under investigation by the FBI for leaking information. He's disgruntled because he was moved in his position. I don't know what the truth is, to be honest with you. But I do think that it's a little odd that you go out and say that the president was bullied into this position by the Israelis. And yet here's all of this, you saying that Iran poses a threat. Fifth group, being the SEALs, is already planning to head in, is what Sean Ryan was saying. There's two other quick things, though, that I want to point out. Obviously, the SAVE Act was a big deal, and I'm glad to see the Senate. But let's be honest, this is ridiculous. The idea that I'm going to ask Brent Buchanan about this. This is an 85-90% issue. You have to have photo ID. Are you kidding me? I think we're messaging this wrong, by the way. Number one, we should say anyone who needs an ID, will give it to you for free. It's yours. It's free. There you go. Let's take that off the table. That's number one. Number two, the Dems want to make everyone a martyr. Women are too stupid because when they changed the name, they couldn't possibly know how to do this. Black people, oh, no way. They can't do this. And yet, when you ask people of color, when you ask women, they find this argument, frankly, insulting, misogynist, and racist for a good reason. It's insane. And we need to be calling that out. Because if you're poor and you get benefits, you need an ID. If you're poor and you have to have a checking account, you need an ID. All of these things just undermine their argument, and it's insane. And by the way, these are the same party that's closing down the Department of Homeland Security. Trust me, when something bad happens, and God forbid it does, it's going to be on the Democrats. Anyway, we're going to be right back with Brent Buchanan of Signal Polling to lay down the latest numbers going into the midterm. You're listening to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on WABC.
This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation
On 77 WABC. Welcome to your personal briefing. The Full Court Press is on the air.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Now, here's Sean Spicer.
Welcome back to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer. I'm your host, Sean Spicer. Good Sunday morning to you. As promised, I've got some new poll numbers. Well, I don't have them. I've got the man who has them. Brent Buchanan is the president of Signal Polling, one of the most accurate pollsters in the nation. They were the go-to firm for so many media outlets looking to know where the numbers really were. Brent, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. I have always dreamt on being on WABC, considering how historic the station is. So appreciate the opportunity to talk to the audience here.
Box checked. Thank John Catsimatidis for that. Anyway, look, tell me where we are. Let's just start. You guys, the first thing you always look at is the generic ballot. Where are the Republicans versus the Democrats? Where do the two parties stand? What are we? Hold on. So this is March. What is it? I'm sorry. I went to public school math. So what is this? 8 months out of the midterms. Where are we?
Well, we're not as in bad of a spot as Republicans as the doom scrolling media might lead you to believe. We're also not in an amazing spot. So, one of the jobs we get hired to do is to guide campaigns and caucuses and political parties and how do you get to where you want to go? And we are not where we want to go yet, but there are paths to it. It is a little bit of an uphill battle at this point, but we also have to take into account we're the governing party. We are the status quo. That is what happens when you're in charge. You get viewed as the status quo. And so we have to calibrate how are we going to win against this. And our starting point is we're down about 4 points to the Democrats on what's called the generic congressional ballot. And so that is not a named ballot. That is just simply asking everybody in the country, if you had to pick the R or pick the D, are you putting on the red or the blue jersey? And as we look at independents on that, we're down with independents, but we're almost always down with independents. It is very rare, even in 22, when we won the House, we were down with independents. So that is not something that is drastic and out of touch. The second thing we look at environmentally is the right direction, wrong track. So do people feel like things are getting better, they're getting worse, or they're staying about the same? And our data shows, because we do this every month, you can go to our website, cygn.al, and pull this up month by month and see the data. We actually showed things were way worse in December than they are today. Albeit our survey started right around the time that we began pummeling Iran. And I'll be very interested to see what our April data shows with gas prices rising. But there's not a lot that's changed about the fundamentals of what this midterm is going to look like.
Okay, so I always tell people, and again, I appreciate that this is like me telling a doctor, and I say that because like I've had first aid training in 6th grade. So I hate saying this to a pollster, but for people out there, one of the things I always say as a political practitioner is that a poll is a snapshot. So if you took a picture of two people going down a highway, you see where they are, but you don't know, is the car on the right overtaking the car on the left, or is it falling behind on the car on the left? Meaning context matters. So you said we're 4 points down on the generic ballot. I think you guys had it at 49-45. But take that snapshot photo and add some context. Are we better than we were the month before and the month before that? Are we worse? And where are the Democrats?
Yeah, great question. The true value of polling is looking at it over time, which is why if you go look at our decks, we go all the way back to January 24 and showing you each month by month data point on this. So if we're looking at that, we have slipped slightly, still better than November when the New Jersey and Virginia elections occurred and we got walloped. We're better than that, but we're not as good as we were last month. But we're talking fractions of a percent changes. And that's something that I think that mainstream media people don't take into account, is that elections don't swing 5 points. That just doesn't happen. We're too polarized of a country to see massive 5, 7, even 2 and 3 point swings. It's why if you ever see a survey that says Republicans have shifted multiple points on the generic ballot or on the presidential ballot, just throw it out. It's worthless because things don't move like that.
What if next month? Would you say that's true if like a massive worldly event like this Iran incursion? I mean, like in other words, sometimes isn't it plausible that a big event going to war or oil prices going through the roof could affect a swing, though?
I think it can, but we have to take human psychology into account on this. And costs are not the only input in somebody's electoral decision. And it's why, and I put this in my book, I lead with this in my book. Everybody remembers the ad, Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. We did not have a problem with tens of millions of transgendered prisoners getting sex changes funded by taxpayers, but that is the number one ad that got more money spent behind it than anything else in the 24 presidential election cycle. And I bring that up as the fact that no one input is going to drive an outcome in a political election. The second that war becomes an issue and maybe costs go up, then you also have safety and security concerns, and you see national security rise as an issue. You might see immigration drop as an issue. We are, you said it when we started, 8 months away from the election. That is a literal political eternity away right now. So if the Iran war is still going on strong in September and oil is $250 a barrel, we have a different conversation. I don't foresee those things happening. And so you also can't react to every small movement within the surveys. You got to calibrate the things that have sustaining trend to them that need addressed. And it's too early to say what that is going to be here. But based on the fact that Americans and the media that drives a lot of that has very short attention spans, I'm not concerned at this point.
Okay, I had an opportunity to sit down with President Trump on Friday for a little bit, and I'm not going to reveal any of the private conversations, but I will say this. He fully appreciates and understands the political nature of what's happening. So that brings me to my second question. Everybody looks at the doom and gloom. What happens if oil prices keep going up? What happens if... I think he has a recognition of the political perils that exist. The guy's very smart politically. So conversely, let's just say that he does a bunch of things within his purview to bring oil prices down, whether the war comes to a complete, conclusion or not. Let's just, because he has a bunch of tools. If oil prices go back down, Brent Buchanan, does the polling then reflect, will it shift? In other words, I get right now, if you ask a lot of people, right down the street from me, gas hit basically $4 a gallon on Friday. Yeah, Friday morning is when it hit up. So, I guess what I'm asking is, I get when churn happens, some people are going to feel unease and they might tell a pollster, I don't know. Conversely, if things get better quickly because the war ends or the president addresses through some kind of policy ways to bring the price down, will he benefit? Will things spring back?
They will, but not at the same pace at which they spiked, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And much of this is also incumbent on how is Trump contrasting us with the Democrats?
That's where I was going.
When you are the status quo, you have to present what the alternative is to the status quo, and that has to be worse than the status quo. But that is incumbent on Republicans to make that case, on Trump more than anybody else to make that case. He has the biggest bullhorn.
So, in other words, I think the opposition party, the minority party, in this case the Democrats, wants this to be a referendum. We on the Republican side want it to be a choice. That being said, my understanding is the favorability of Democrats right now is not high.
Exactly. You are currently experiencing in the polling a reflexive opposition to Trump, but not a positive towards Democrats. Their image, I was just digging into this data this morning, right in my daily article. Democrats are 56% unfavorable in Congress. Among all midterm voters, Republicans are 55% unfavorable. That is not a positive choice that somebody is making at this point, which is why we have to prosecute the case, because the gravitational pull around replacing the status quo is strong anywhere.
So when we look at a top line number, in this case, 49-45. That's the generic ballot. But obviously people like you dig in and say, okay, well, it's like a doctor. Okay, you got a pain. Okay, let's feel around. Let's see where it really hurts. Where is the pain electorally? I know there's a bunch of subgroups. For example, you've got this subset that you guys call swing voters. Where are they? And what did that portend for the midterms?
Great question. So right now, swing voters, which we have as a group of people that are not fully with the Republican, not fully with the Democrat, or they're undecided, because nobody can tell you, hey, I'm a swing voter. So we use that as the proxy, and it's tied, highly undecided, as you would expect, but tied. That has shifted from that group leaned more Republican. So this growth that both parties saw in their generic ballot standing from February to March, a few more people sorted into the Democratic column from the swing voter column. But if we're looking to diagnose what is the larger problem that Republicans have to address and where are the opportunities, it is almost exclusively with voters under the age of 55. I just did an analysis this weekend looking at our exit polling that we have of 9,000 people who voted in the 2024 presidential election. What vote choice did they make? Harris, Trump, or a third party? And then where are those demographic groups today on the generic ballot? 100% of the delta to the negative from where we ended the presidential race to where we are today comes from voters under the age of 55. Secondly, it comes,
and that was a group that he did well with.
Yes. And he could probably say he's in the White House because of voters under the age of 55 and non-college voters. Huge voter base for the Republicans over the last 20 years has become the base for Republicans. And there's been a good bit of erosion among those folks. From a geographic standpoint, it's the suburbs and the rural areas. Republicans have improved in more urban areas, which is kind of counterintuitive. But that is who Republicans need to be focused on right now. They need to be asking themselves, what does this mean for a voter under the age of 55? That needs to be the lens under which everything is filtered right now for Republicans.
And I know you and I have talked about in the past on the Sean Spicer Show, which obviously everyone can watch every day on YouTube, on my channel, as well as The Huddle. You identified single white women as a major red flag for issues. Is that still a problem?
Yes, a huge problem. I think one of the data points you're talking about is we asked folks if it was okay to break the law if you didn't like what ICE was doing. And upper 60% of young liberal women said that was okay, when 70+% of the country said, no, that is not okay to do. This particular voter group is about as radically outside the mainstream of any voter group on either side of the aisle.
You also talk about, I'm looking at the data here that you guys have at Signal, and it says 18 to 29-year-olds break 64 to 31 Democrat on the generic ballot, but they view Democrats net unfavorably by a 4-point margin. In other words, they might vote Democrat, but they don't like them. What you and I have talked about this in the past. When you say Republicans or the president need to go out there and make the case, what does that mean? Where do they make the case? How do they make the case?
Not on ABC Nightly News, because if you are an under 55-year-old watching ABC Nightly News, you're a weird person, or you're a liberal. Those are your two options, or I repeat myself. So we have to go where President Trump went in the 24 election. We've got to get on these long-form podcasts and authentically have hard conversations. That's what younger folks are looking for. They do not trust institutions. They are highly skeptical of almost anything. And to present yourself in a raw, authentic, long-form way is how we build trust back with these people. The individuals who say that is the types of podcasts, YouTube channels, social media, people who tell us that is where they get their information, they were positive for us in the presidential election. They are currently negative for us. And if you watch broadcast or cable, your opinion really hasn't changed between the two elections. So this is not just a messaging problem, it is a medium problem.
And so that's the thing. So we got to remember the platforms in the medium, like you're saying, but it's also I think how we're communicating, if that makes sense. I feel like too many times people are they want to dance around affordability or whatever, as opposed to saying, hey, we're working hard. We have somewhere to go for. Brent, I don't think it's that different than an employee, right? If your employee comes to you and you say, is the job done? Well, no, but I've made progress on these 3 fronts. I'm working towards the end. I'll have an answer for you on Tuesday. I feel like, okay, good. And I think too often Republicans just like to pretend that, we worked on the job. We passed the housing bill or whatever, fill in the blank bill, as if that was the only way to solve it. And we're not continuing down the path of making progress for you.
How people feel about where things are today is based on what has been done. Elections are decided on what will be done. And you cannot say, we told you we would do 10 things, we did 10 things, reelect us. That is helpful, but it cannot be the only leg you stand on. You need the other leg, the more important one, which is saying, and here's what we are going to continue to do for you. Here's what we're going to stop from happening that's currently happening, and you hate it. I'm going to make that thing you hate go away. You always have to be pointing to the future. I wrote about this in my book, America's Emotional Divide, talking through the how. How do we talk about these things? And it is meeting somebody where they are. You can't come in and say, the country is doing amazing and costs are coming down and wages are rising if somebody is terrified about their future. They're not going to hear you until you say, I get that things are scary out there right now and a lot of change is happening.
You guys wrote in your
that simple of acknowledging.
Yeah, no, I get it. Again, it's like, hey, I'm working hard. I'm going to keep going. Most people get that message. If you tell them the job is done, right? I mean, my dad used to do this when I mowed the lawn. I'd say, oh, I did it. And he'd look out and he'd be like, that's not done. Get back out there, right? And because he could see clearly that I hadn't done a really good job and I was trying to sell it, as opposed to, hey, I'm working on it. I'll be done in an hour. Okay, good. Keep going. You can't expect people to see what they see with their own eyes and tell them it's something different, which is what Biden did. But I want to ask you this. You guys have a really interesting nugget in the data that I see in the Signal polling memo here, where it says the SAVE Act is the best wedge issue. Americans broadly support the SAVE Act by a 20-point margin. So are we messaging this right? Is this just Democrats being obstructionists, or are we not messaging it right?
We're not contrasting it. we're saying that there's a problem and this is a solution to it, but we're not saying what the other side believes about it and how outside the mainstream that is. Like, nobody believes that you shouldn't have to show an ID to vote. Well, there are hard partisan Democrats that believe that, but normal people and folks who are in the middle believe you should have to show an ID to vote, that you should have to be a citizen in order to register to vote. Those are very common sense ideas. And the reason it's such a wedge issue is because the other side of that issue is so narrow in who actually believes it. And it's like the transgendered prisoner sex change thing. There are some people who believe it. It's a really small segment of folks. And then there's everybody else. And we need these types of issues, but we have to prosecute that case with the voters and contrast it in a way where it is super clear. Republicans have this common sense approach to ensure that your vote will count and not be canceled out by an illegal alien or somebody who is claiming to be another person and voting more than one time. Like, we can't afford that to happen. The Democrats are in the way. They want that to happen. They are fine with that.
Yeah, I get it, and that's, I just can't believe that it's not, considering the popularity of it, that and the ridiculousness of the Dems side. That it's
because we got squishy Republicans in the Senate. That's our problem.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Last thing I want to ask you, I got about 30 seconds left. President's making the case, largely that Iran is a threat, that they had a nuclear weapon. Does that message sell?
It sells for those who were already in our camp. The threat is so far away, and they haven't seen the problem with it. Here's the real issue. For 47 years, nobody had the guts to do anything that Donald Trump just had the guts to do. And there are some repercussions for dealing with a 47-year-old problem.
Okay. I get it. And that's why, again, so much of this stuff, maybe I'm just, I think so much of this comes back to messaging, getting out there, selling it, going to the right places, because I think we're right on the issues. Anyway, Brent Buchanan, Signal polling, all of the information that we found, guys, that we just talked about is available on Signal's website, and it's cygn.al. cygn.al. Brent Buchanan, thanks for being with us. We'll have you back soon. You guys are listening to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer. I will be right back here on WABC.
This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation
on 77 WABC. The Full Court Press is on the air.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Now, here's Sean Spicer.
Welcome back. Good Sunday morning to you. This is Sean Spicer. I am excited to be with you. What a fascinating conversation with Brent Buchanan. But here's the takeaway that I have, just so we're clear. The policies are with us. People support what President Trump's doing on his face. Getting people out, stopping men from being in women's sports, cutting taxes, DOGE, the SAVE Act. They're all hugely popular. But there's two issues that are problematic. One is we're not going anymore where the people are. He alluded to this, but President Trump on the campaign trail went and did Sean Ryan, Theo Vaughn, the Nelk Boys. There's a whole bunch of them. I talk about it in my book, Trump 2.0. He went where voters are now. And if we're not doing as well with women, guess what, folks? Reach out to some of these mommy blogs. Go out on Substack, where a lot of them have newsletters, and do interviews with them. Go do a lot of these independent media things. Like it's just we're President Trump showed the way to do this, and yet we're not. We're like, wow, what do we do? Anyway, it annoys the heck out of me because he's given us the blueprint. And secondly, is the messaging. Like, why are we not being smarter about what we're doing, making that contrast, telling people what we're delivering? On affordability, there's a lot that we can be saying we're doing. I get it. People can be with you. Like, I always, maybe this doesn't resonate with everybody, but I always like to use sports metaphors, right? And so I'm a huge Patriots fan, and I know. I'm talking to a group that's probably largely Jets and Giants, but bear with me. But here's the point. Like, I can acknowledge when we have a bad game or a bad play, and I bet you can too. And so there are times when you have to be honest about where your party's at. And right now, we've got the issues. So it's almost like, again, going to the team metaphor. We got a great team on the field. We're just running bad plays and we're not, effectively utilizing the players. We need to message better. Even on the SAVE Act, as I said before, like, why are we not out there just saying, well, you get a free one? Take the arguments off the Dems' plate. This idea that women can't, they get married and they have no clue how to change their name. Are you insane? That is so misogynistic and insulting. The idea that people of color can't get an ID. I mean, come on. And it doesn't make sense. And I know a lot of people on our side say, well, if you get on an airplane, well, poor people may not take that many flights, so maybe they don't know. But where was this outrage about real IDs? Where is this outrage about, well, how they're ever going to get their SNAP benefits or their welfare benefits or their housing subsidies? They have to have an ID for all of that. You're not too concerned on the left about the poor people getting all that, are you? In fact, you help them. Why now? Because again, it's what you're doing. This isn't by mistake. It's not like they're just doing it. They know what they're covering up. They don't want photo ID. I mean, that's just a fact. They don't. They wanted to let a lot of people into the country illegally, do everything they could to protect them, and then help them. That's it, plain and simple. Dems didn't have a good week, though. They just didn't. Kathy Hochul, do you remember it was August of 22? And she started just railing about all of these people on the right. Get out of here, go to Florida. Here's the clip. Let me play it for you.
And we're here to say that the era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not New Yorkers.
That may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard anyway. I mean, she sounded like you get out of here, you goofball. Like, you go, get out. Anyway, you don't represent our values. You're not New Yorkers. Well, I don't know if it was because of her, but a lot of people apparently listened and they bolted and they went to Florida just like she guessed because her policies were creating a woke, unsustainable place in New York. Too expensive to live, too nuts, funding everything. You guys saw this week. I mean, right? They're paying over $80,000 per homeless person. Hell, I'd be graduated from college and go be homeless. Make pretty good. 80 grand to be homeless? I mean, I could use the 80 grand and then get a home. That's how nuts she is. But here's the kicker. So if you're going to be a Democrat, right, and think about the premise of Kathy Hochul or Zora Mondami, they want your money because they want to spend all sorts of like left-wing, woke, crazy proposals, right? Free this, free that, free everything, etc. Okay. Well, here's the problem. When you tell everyone to leave, you know what they take with them? Their money. That's right, Kathy. I mean, I got a D in economics, folks, just to be straight with you guys. So you don't take any kind of like economic or financial advice from me. But I know this. If you tell people with money to leave, generally speaking, they take their money. So she has all of these big plans to spend all everyone's money on these big social programs. And when she told all those people to leave and they did, guess where she now is? This is her this week begging everyone to come back.
Now, there are some patriotic millionaires who stepped up. Okay, cut me the checks. I mean, just if you want to be supportive, but maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who you can bring back home, because our tax base has been eroded.
Our tax base has been eroded? Gosh, Kathy, why was it eroded? How many of you guys remember, you probably have to be a little bit older, you remember Fast Times at Ridgemont High when Mr. Hand was talking to Spicoli, Sean Penn, and he says, gee, Mr. Spicoli, wonder what that means. Like, the tax base hasn't been eroded. You told them to leave, dummy. And when they left, they took their money. And then your tax base was lower and you weren't able to pay for your left-wing crazy programs. Hello? This wasn't rocket science. It's unbelievable. But as I said, it wasn't just one Democrat that had a bad week. Several did. There is a congresswoman in Texas. Her name is Veronica Escobar. And a staffer of hers allegedly, and this is according to Fox News, lied about being an attorney at least 11 times for detainees at a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in an effort to meet with them and to sneak cell phones. Now, think about this. The staffer for this congresswoman goes to these ICE facilities, jails, I don't know what the technical term is, and says, hey, I'm their attorney. She's not even an attorney, never mind their attorney. So acting ICE Director Todd Lyons informed the congresswoman that this woman, Benito Torres, a senior caseworker, is in fact lying. And she had visited this Fort Bliss facility in El Paso. Unbelievable. This is what Todd Lyons, the acting ICE Director, wrote to the congresswoman. The available evidence demonstrates your staffer, a senior caseworker named Benito Torres, misrepresented himself as counsel for detainees in ICE custody, violated clear detention standards and security protocols, prohibiting the use of cell phones inside ICE facilities, improperly met with multiple detainees, and falsely claimed to ICE personnel such use had been approved by the agency. I mean, that's like 18 violations of the law. So for all the media hubbub about Minneapolis and all of the violations, this is a member of Congress's staffer lying about somebody's constitutional rights in theory, like that they have a right to counsel. Where's the outrage? So, I mean, I guess like you can undermine democracy only if one side does it. Is that how it works? Right? I mean, I'm just saying, I find the whole thing so fascinating. And so many times I get wound up, not just because of the incident, but because I've been on the receiving end of so much of this crap from the media. You know, little Tommy said something at Jefferson Middle School. Does the Republican National Committee have a response? Meanwhile, here's the Democrat, member of Congress, with a staffer lying about being an attorney. I think that's in itself a breaking law. Then telling ICE that they have the right to bring cell phones in. Boom, 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 boom. And no one but Fox News covers this? Where is this? And then that's not just the only member of the Texas congressional delegation that's an absolute ding-dong. Our good buddy Jasmine Crockett. Now, as you may know, several members of Congress they've got new rules that allow them to use some campaign funds and even some official funds for security. So she is this guy that's her like bodyguard. And the last few days, the guy was killed by Dallas police. According to CNN, he was just killed. Like there's no context. But I dug into it. There is some context here. This guy was a bona fide criminal and then gets involved in a chase with Dallas police. They've got this on body cam. This isn't disputable. And you notice it hasn't become an issue because it's not disputable, because if they could make some kind of case out of this, they'd be going after the Dallas police. But because there's absolute silence, I'm right. So this guy gets killed and they basically reveal that this guy's got this massive criminal record. So the guy that Jasmine Crockett hired to be the head of her security is a big time criminal. But the kicker of this, and what makes this so beautiful, is that then she blames the process. She blames Congress. Says, well, why didn't they vet him? So you hire this guy off like Craigslist to be your security person. I have a feeling, by the way, that if we gave her some sodium pentothal, she'd be like, yeah, I knew he was a criminal. Like, I'm sorry, I don't doubt she knew this. They've said that this guy worked for her for a long time and he knew the thing and blah, 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 blah. So I don't have any doubt in my mind that that's what really happened. That this is Jasmine Crockett knew this guy. She knew what happened. But there's two other quick events that I want to point out to you that happened this weekend, this week, that really led to the Dems having a bad week. And the first one is in this Illinois, there was a Democratic primary, and the governor there, J.B. Pritzker, was riding high because his lieutenant governor, a woman named Juliana Stratton, won this Democratic primary to replace five-term Senator Dick Durbin. She's black, okay? But here's the problem. She's not the right black person. What do I mean by that? The Congressional Black Caucus is apparently really pissed off about Pritzker and his financial support to her, that they claim unfairly tilted the race in Stratton's favor and away from their own candidate, Rep. Robin Kelly. So now they're saying that they won't forget, quote, that he crossed them. He crossed them. I'm sorry. So now it's not bad enough. Like, you have to pick the right person. You can't just, like, you don't get credit for supporting the right DEI person. This is how bad these guys are. Anyway, I said there were two. Here's my second one for you. There were these allegations. There's a guy, and frankly, you guys may know this in your city, wherever you live. And I know the WABC audience, because of the app, everybody, it goes everywhere. Cesar Chavez, if you go through down, I live in Virginia, but I go through DC a lot. And there's a Cesar Chavez school. He's a farm worker, labor leader, hero to the left. Well, apparently the New York Times did this big bombshell that he raped a woman. He had children out of wedlock. He sexually abused a ton of them. And this guy that they have streets and community centers and schools all named after, a big labor hero, apparently is not a good guy at all. And even the family of Cesar Chavez is coming out, like, apologizing to the women. So it sounds like everybody kind of knew it. They just didn't say it. I mean, that's my read on this, because no one denied it. No one said, "Oh, you're making my dad look bad or my grandfather look bad." They're admitting it. They're saying we're sorry about the pain that we caused. And all. Democrats knew. They knew this. It's just so funny. These guys are so into the woke, name everything after someone that's like, and this is, and now they're having to go through their own process of tearing themselves apart. But it wasn't lost on me that it just didn't get a ton of attention, because again, when that blows up on the left, we don't care. But here's when I knew it was really bad. CNN did a little segment about polling and where it is, and I want you to listen to how they framed how bad Democrats have it right now.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
Wow. That was CNN's Harry Enton. If you've lost CNN, my friends, you are in big trouble. I mean, honestly, that's where they are right now. It's embarrassing. And it doesn't surprise me when you say these crazy left-wing things that are so far out of the mainstream. When you say that the SAVE Act is Jim Crow 2.0, and then you require people to have two forms of ID to shovel snow in New York. I mean, the average person goes, that doesn't pass the smell test. So I know sometimes we beat up on ourselves, but let's also remember they're not having a good day on the other side of the aisle at all. And that's important. So I just think context matters. Anyway, I appreciate you guys spending your Sunday with me. Thank you to John Catsimatidis, WABC, for giving me this honor. Joe Concha is on his way up. He'll have a great show as well. As I said, I just got a brand new book out, Trump 2.0. President Trump met with him in the Oval Office. I've got those pictures up on social media if you want to check it out. But go to Amazon, order Trump 2.0. And remember, you can catch me every single night in the morning live at 8:30 and then again at 6 o'clock on YouTube at Sean M. Spicer on YouTube. Thanks for being here. Have a great Sunday. I'll see you back here next week.